Here is a Technics stereo integrated amplifier, model SU-Z2. And looking at it from this perspective, looking at the front of the unit, this looks like a really serious, really impressive amplifier, doesn't it? Well, if I pan up a little bit, no, that actually looks kind of cute. Now, don't get me wrong, I actually really like the fact that this is such a small and compact little amplifier, and it's the reason why I dug it out, because I do need a small little amplifier for the computer, and I don't have an unlimited amount of space on my desk for an amplifier. So the story of this little amplifier is a friend of mine found this at the dump, and when I first saw it, I instantly liked it. And the first opportunity to get it was when this friend expressed interest in a 1974 National Panasonic receiver that I had just restored. It was quite a fancy one with wooden case and all that, but I said, you know what, you can have this receiver if I can have the little Technics amplifier. So that's how this got into my possession. It's now been sitting around for quite a while, in fact, for over a year. So I don't remember what the status of this was. So let's begin by taking off the cover. Here is the back of the amplifier, and for such a small unit, we actually have a fairly generous amount of inputs and outputs. We have a phono input, 2 line level inputs, and 2 tape monitor loops, and then 2 pairs of speaker outputs. Unfortunately, these are these twist and lock type terminals, which are somewhat fragile. Inside the amplifier, we find a lot of dust. We have this nicely shielded transformer. This is actually a fairly substantial metal case over the transformer. This funny arrangement down here is the input voltage selector, which is accessible from the bottom of the amplifier. Over here is the power supply. We have a pair of 6800 microfarad at 45 volt capacitors. Over here is the heart of the amplifier. This is an STK2038 hybrid circuit, which is mounted to a rather funny heatsink setup, which has been put together from all kinds of various pieces of metal. That's a bit cheap, especially since these STK packages tend to put out a lot of heat. The preamplifier consists of these 2 dual operational amplifiers down there, and then we have another dual operational amplifier for the phono preamp right there. I took the unit to the air compressor, but unfortunately this must have gotten wet at some point because a lot of the dust is really caked on and won't come out, and I could also see some rust in a few places. Well, the amplifier is now plugged in, so let's turn it on and see what happens. Nothing spectacular. There is no speaker protection relay, so we won't get to hear any of that. It's now time to use the voltmeter and measure the speaker outputs for the presence of any DC voltage. Left channel about 10 millivolts, that's okay. Right channel about 5 millivolts. So that's all fine. Time to connect some speakers. Speakers have been connected, and just as a little reminder, you may be tempted to try and force these connectors to go the full 90 degrees around until they actually lock, but that is a great way to break them. So if they won't go any further, leave them alone. The CD player is playing the obligatory license-free music that you all love so much. CD player is connected to the auxiliary input. Let's turn on the amplifier and see what happens. Okay. Main speakers are selected. Oh. Just the volume turned all the way down. Okay, no sound from the right channel. I'd say we probably... No, there is no more audio at all. I can hear it coming through very faintly. Might have some contact problems in here. Oh yes, tape monitor. Yep, the tape monitor has some serious contact problems. See, now I have the right channel, but the left channel is gone. Okay, time to get out the contact cleaner. After spraying plenty of contact cleaner and operating the switches a lot of times, I finally got the unit working quite well. I went through, I sprayed these two potentiometers, these switches, and these two potentiometers. Thankfully, the input selector and speaker selector switches seem to be fine, no contact problems in there, which is good because those are all sealed switches. It's a couple of days later now. I did some cleaning, as you can hopefully see. That wasn't easy because you can't just simply take off the faceplate on this amplifier because there is no subchassis, meaning all the potentiometers are screwed in directly through the faceplate. I didn't feel like undoing all these screws, so I just pulled off all the knobs and wiped off the faceplate. So it's not perfect, but it's better than it was before. However, one problem still needs to be fixed. You might be able to see on the VU meters the right channel is consistently louder than the left channel. This becomes even more apparent when I activate the loudness. So that's definitely not how that is supposed to be. And it took a while to diagnose the problem. I had to use headphones and basically kept turning the balance control and, adjusting all the switches to try and figure out what could be the problem. And it turns out it's the bass control. For the right channel, the bass control, for some reason, is always stuck on maximum, and it can't be adjusted. Now, as you can see, if I adjust the bass control to maximum, both channels are fairly consistent. So, I need to see what's wrong with this bass control. And instead of flooding it with the expensive contact cleaner once again, hoping for a change, I think what I should do is disassemble the amplifier to take a look at the solder joints. And that won't be fun because this amplifier was not designed with serviceability in mind. I guess what I'll have to do is I'll have to undo all the screws in the back for all the all the jacks and connections, and then the screws holding the faceplate on. And then I should hopefully be able to pull off this case. The problem's going to be the transformer is all mounted to that, so I hope these cables will be long enough to give me some room to maneuver. Well, that actually worked better than expected. As you can see, I got the unit apart. And this has got to be one of the rare cases where I'm not happy that there are no bad solder joints. They weren't very generous with the solder, but it's just enough for good connections. There are no bad solder joints on the bass control, nor the treble control. In fact, the only bad solder joints that I was able to find in here are at the DIN jack. But that is most definitely not related to our problem with the bass control. So I guess I'm going to go through, I'm going to double check, going to redo all the solder joints that look questionable, but we haven't found the problem yet. Well, I don't know if it's because of the mechanical stress of taking the unit apart and putting it back together, or if it is because I did resolder a bunch of solder joints. The problem has disappeared. As you can see, it now works as desired. Now, I'm not a fan of problems fixing themselves, because this basically means that this might be an intermittent problem. So I'll have to keep this amplifier open, and I'm going to keep testing it for a bit longer, just to make sure that everything's going to be fine from now on. I'm not going to let you wait until I decide that everything's fine, so this is the end of the video. Thank you for watching.